In early 2017, my wife and I took what became my all-time favorite vacation, my all-time favorite trip. Every year we take a big trip on our anniversary, and for our third year, we went out west on what is called the Grand Circle. If you look up the Grand Circle, everyone seems to have a different idea of what it is. It really seems like no two Grand Circle trips are the same. How much time you have is a big factor, and what you want to see is also a giant factor. But our Grand Circle trip covered 3 states, Utah, Arizona, and Nevada, 6 national parks, Zion, Bryce Canyon, Capitol Reef, Arches, Canyonlands, and the Grand Canyon, and also Antelope Canyon and Monument Valley, and a total of 1,452 miles. I've been meaning to make this video for a very long time now. I know this is a bit different than the normal types of videos I do, and some of you watching this probably just stumbled upon this video while you're doing your own Grand Circle trip research. And you're probably wondering, why the hell is this dude wearing a stormtrooper helmet? Well, welcome. This is a Star Wars YouTube channel, normally. But I wanted to make this video because when my wife and I were researching for our trip, it was a bit daunting. A lot of information, a lot of moving parts, but have no fear, it's way easier than you think. And for those of you guys who have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, just sit back, enjoy some pictures, and maybe one day you'll plan a similar trip. Here's what we did. Our first destination was Zion National Park. From Las Vegas, it's about a 2.5-hour drive. We had our camping plot reserved at Ferber Resorts, which is literally right outside of the entrance to Zion National Park. So when we got there, we hooked up the RV, made sure everything was good to go, and walked on over to a local brewery for some dinner and some beers. Day 2. Our plan was to spend 1 full day at Zion National Park. We walked from our campsite to the entrance of the park, which took no time. The park actually has a shuttle service that will take you right to your desired trailhead. It really comes in handy. If you're researching for this trip, I'm sure you've seen a lot of Angel's Landing hiking pictures and videos. It's a very popular hike. Angel's Landing is probably the most popular hike in the park. Well, to be honest, that's one of the biggest reasons we decided not to do it. We like avoiding people. And if you're like us, then you might want to do the hike that we did. We chose to do the 8-mile round-trip strenuous observation point hike. I'm not too sure how long the hike took us. Maybe 5-6 hours, maybe longer. We were in no rush, and I have a bad habit of stopping every 10 feet to take pictures. Observation Point is a tough one. It was one of the toughest hikes I've ever done. The beginning of the trail, I think, is the hardest. Once you make it past the daunting switchbacks that feel never-ending, things really start to level out a bit. It's a slow climb after that. And once you get to the top, the view you're given is absolutely breathtaking. And you can actually see Angel's Landing from the top of Observation Point. Below you, you can see how crowded it is too, and be thankful that you're not there. Observation Point was the hardest hike we did on the entire trip. And I'm glad we did it first. Everything after it felt like a breeze. When we finished with the Observation Point hike, we got a bite to eat, and a few victory beers at that brewery I mentioned earlier. We went back to the RV to freshen up and then got ready for some dinner. Day 3. We woke up early on day 3, said goodbye to Zion National Park, and started the 1.5-hour drive to Bryce Canyon National Park. We had a KOA campsite reserved, but we decided to hike before checking into the campsite since we made it so early. The hike we did in Bryce Canyon was our favorite hike of the trip. It's called Peekaboo Loop. The trail is roughly 5 miles. And it actually starts out on another trail called Navajo Loop, which is a short trail close to the parking lot. Most people seem to finish Navajo Loop and then just turn around and go back to their car, but Peekaboo Loop is at the end of Navajo Loop. So we decided to keep going, and I'm so glad we did. We were probably out there for 4 hours, soaking in the scenery, enjoying the hike, and I'm not exaggerating when I say we only saw like 5 people in those 4 hours. It's like we were on another planet, exploring it all by ourselves. Every time we turned a corner, another mind-blowing scene would pop up, stopping us dead in our tracks. Peekaboo Loop, in my opinion, is a Bryce Canyon must. Sure, you can park in a parking lot and look into the canyon, but Peekaboo Loop puts you inside of the canyon, walking among the towering hoodoos. It is amazing. After Peekaboo Loop, our favorite hike of the trip, we decided to check into our campsite, hang out, crack some beers, and grill some burgers over our campfire. Later that night, for the first time in my life, I tried some night sky photography, and they didn't turn out good. I was pretty disappointed with how they came out. I've gotten better since this trip, but man, my biggest regret is not practicing before I went on this trip. I didn't really know how to get the focusing down with these optically infinite objects. And man, with the lack of light pollution, I could have gotten some amazing shots. If you're a photographer and you're looking to shoot some astrophotography, test some stuff out at home. Even if you have a lot of light pollution at home, it's still worth going out there and doing a long exposure just to get a feel for it, you know? Maybe next time. Day 4. The next morning, we woke up super early to catch a sunrise at Bryce Canyon, specifically at Sunrise Point. It was amazing. It is a must, and pictures do not do it justice. Like so many things in this video, pictures do not do it justice. So day 4 was kind of a travel day. The way we mapped out our trip, we figured one full day needed to be spent driving. And we had to prioritize what we wanted to see anyway. Our final destination for day 4 was Arches National Park. And from Bryce Canyon to Arches, it's a 4.5-hour drive. But in between Bryce and Arches is Capitol Reef National Park. And we would be damned if we came all this way and did not finish the Utah Mighty 5. So we started driving towards Capitol Reef, stopping alongside the road, hiking a tiny bit to see some petroglyphs, and eating some pie at a little Mormon house in the park. I wish we had more time to stay, but we had to keep on moving. If you like driving and you like road trips, you will love this trip, hands down. The drives are beautiful and calming. The old adage of the journey being just as important as the destination without a doubt rings true here. So when we got to Arches National Park, which is right outside of Moab, Utah, we found our campsite and went into Moab for a bite to eat. If I could move anywhere, I think I would move to Moab. There's a sense of freedom that I felt there. It's like the whole town was washed in adventure and excitement. Just a really awesome attitude in that town. I would love to move there one day. I loved Moab. We found a brewery, of course, got some beers, got some food, and went back to the campsite to rest after a long day of travel and to prepare for the next morning's adventure. Day 5. Arches National Park and Canyonlands National Park are only about 40 minutes away from one another. So for day 5, we decided to do both, starting with Arches. Our first spot was Delicate Arch. Out of all the hikes we did, the Delicate Arch hike was the most crowded. And that makes complete sense. It's pretty damn amazing. It's beautiful. The hike is about 3 miles round trip. It's not too bad. The hike is incredible in itself, but the final destination is stunning. You're met with this enormous arch called Delicate Arch, carved by eons of erosion and weathering. A British couple was kind enough to take our photo underneath the arch. You can see just how big it is, how it just dwarfs human beings. After the Delicate Arch hike, we continued to drive around the park. There are more than 2,000 natural sandstone arches to be seen in the park, ranging from tiny to absolutely mind-blowingly huge. And do you recognize this one from somewhere? Do you? Let me make it a bit easier. Still don't recognize it? Okay, I'll give it away. This is Double Arch, as seen in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It was very crowded, and I may have photoshopped a lot of people out of this image. So yeah, Arches National Park is really friendly for drivers. Double Arch, for example, is right next to a parking lot and only a short half-mile round trip, easy walk to get to the base. If you're short on time, you can see a lot in Arches just by driving around and getting out. So that same day after we'd seen Arches, we decided to go to Canyonlands National Park, which is 40 minutes, like I said, away from Arches. It was late in the day, only a few hours left until sunset, so we found the famed Mesa Arch and prepared for sunset. And this guy was not abiding by the signs, you asshole. Day 5 was really nice. It was one of the least planned out days that we had. All we really had written down was hike Delicate Arch and go to Canyonlands. Everything in between was improvised, and it was nice. Never felt rushed. Day 6. We had another long drive ahead of us for day 6. Our final destination was Antelope Canyon, near Page, Arizona. So from our Moab campsite outside of Arches to Page, Arizona was about 4.5 hours long. But right in between that drive was Monument Valley. You'll without a doubt recognize Monument Valley from Westerns and from Forrest Gump when he decides to stop running and tells everyone he's going home. Despite some of the drives from destination to destination being super long, they had awesome spots to check out at the halfway point. And Monument Valley served as both a pilgrimage and a nice break from driving. Make sure no cars are coming, set up the tripod, pretend to run like Forrest Gump, and get that shot. After Monument Valley, we continued on our journey, leaving Utah and crossing into Arizona, with only about 2 hours left to get to our campsite, which was located on Lake Powell. When we got there, we went to Horseshoe Bend for sunset, which, holy hell, if you want to see a ton of photographers all snapping the same picture, That's the place to be. Hundreds of photographers with tripods, all fighting for the best spot. And all the spots are good, guys. They're all good. But be careful. People are not paying attention, man. Bumping into one another. I trust myself when I walk. I trust my own footing. I do not trust other people's footing. I do not trust them. This was the only time I was legitimately nervous for safety reasons, because people are just trying to get that selfie, completely oblivious to their surroundings, knocking into people. It could have gone horribly wrong. I'm sure it has. After catching an amazing sunset at Horseshoe Bend, we found an awesome Mexican place to eat and went to a bar that my dad said he went to with his buddies in the 70s. I was really surprised to find out that it was still there. Kinda neat. Day 7. The next morning we went to Antelope Canyon, specifically Lower Antelope Canyon, where we had a tour scheduled. Lower Antelope Canyon is a slot canyon that was formed, and is forever being formed, by flash floods. The walls of the canyon are so insanely smooth. The variation in color is beautiful. You can only go down into the canyon with a Navajo guide, which is good. They know what they're doing. They're insanely knowledgeable about the canyon itself, and they know what to look out for in terms of impending flash floods, because flash floods still happen all the time and still kill people trapped inside. In 1997, 11 people died in Lower Antelope Canyon. Guides are a good thing. After our amazing Lower Antelope Canyon tour, we hopped back in the RV and started driving 2.5 hours towards our final destination of the trip, the south rim of the Grand Canyon National Park. We wanted to go to the north rim because we've heard it's less populated, less people, and as I said earlier, we like to avoid people. But the north rim was actually closed when we went, for weather reasons. I guess it was too harsh, too much freezing. I don't know. So we got to our campsite in the Grand Canyon, and it was storming like crazy, pouring rain, booming thunder, but this did not bum us out at all. We planned on hanging out in the RV that night anyway, so we just made some turkey sandwiches, played some cards, and relaxed in our pajamas. This was the only primitive campsite that we had the entire trip. No electricity or sewage lines, which wasn't a big deal at all, even though it was without a doubt the coldest part of our trip. You can run the heater on propane in the RV if you want to. We would occasionally turn it on just to heat up the RV a little bit, but I had no idea how much propane we were going through. I thought we were just draining it, so I was being super stingy. It turns out when we dropped the RV off, we barely used any propane the entire trip, so we could have had that heater on full blast. Oh well. Day 8. Day 8 was nice. We decided to use this day just to kind of recover from being on the go. It was snowing like crazy, which was beautiful, and for us Floridians, so exciting. And the park, at least where we were, was empty. We pretty much had the entire south rim to ourselves, which was awesome. We walked down to a restaurant, got some breakfast, hung out in a bar, and relaxed in the RV all day. It was nice to have a day like this. Day 9. On the 9th and final day, we decided to hike a bit of the Bright Angel Trail. The full trail actually goes all the way down into the canyon, and there are signs everywhere telling you not to do it in one day. They want you to hike down, camp, replenish your water, hike back up. The signs will tell you if you don't bring X amount of water, you will die. There are warnings because it happens all the time. People just see that the trail is relatively short, they get overconfident, don't recognize the dangers, and get into some shit. So we just hiked down to a certain point where we saw a park ranger giving a talk about how the local chipmunks are not hibernating anymore and aren't able to fend for themselves. They're not able to scavenge for themselves or feed themselves because park guests keep feeding them, which was a bummer. And then we hiked back up to the start. But yeah, talk about people not being prepared. We saw a guy in a suit and a woman in heels starting to walk down the trail, and they actually went way farther than I thought they would. But when they had to come back up, which is always the hardest part, the part that people don't think about, holy hell, they looked like death. People never cease to amaze me. You gotta be prepared for this shit. It's ridiculous. The rest of the day, we just kind of drank beer, hung out, bought some souvenirs, and packed for the drive back to Vegas in the morning. Day 10. We woke up super early, dropped the RV off at Cruise America, talked to some families who were picking up their own RV to do a similar trip to what we just did, and gave them some pointers, and then went to the airport to come home. So yeah, this was my all-time favorite trip, hands down. I want to do it again so bad. When my daughter grows up to an age where she can appreciate something like this, I want to take her out there. It would be such a fun family trip for the three of us. If I could do it all over again, obviously I'd love to have some more time, right? But if I could do it all over again with the time we had allotted, I'd cut one day off in the Grand Canyon. I'd get rid of it and put it somewhere else. And I'd either actually stay a night in Capitol Reef instead of driving through it, or stay another day in Zion. Zion National Park was beautiful. I was actually kind of bummed when we left it. But the thing is, every single place we went to was breathtaking. There are no duds. And they're all so different from one another. That's what's pretty incredible. They're all relatively close to one another, but they're so vastly different from one another. These places are preserved for a reason. They're protected for future generations, for my daughter, for your kids, for your grandkids. They're protected to avoid short-term, short-sighted thought. So yeah, if I had to do it all over again, I would chop off a day in the Grand Canyon and tack it on to another park. The Grand Canyon was awesome, don't get me wrong, but compared to the other parks we went to, it was Disney World. Giant tour buses parking, hundreds of tourists filing out, walking to the edge, taking a picture, walking back to the bus, all day, every day. If you can go to the North Rim instead of the South Rim, I'd say do that, even though I've never been there. It's probably closer to the experience we were hoping for. In terms of supplies, as soon as we got our RV, we drove to Walmart. We got a few pounds of hamburger meat for the fridge, and all the things that go with hamburgers, of course, buns, condiments, yada yada. We got a lot of non-perishables, granola bars, Cheez-Its, that kind of stuff. We got some turkey meat to make turkey sandwiches, a whole bunch of beer. We actually bought a little $10 coffee pot and used that on the trip. And the thing is, with a lot of these stuff, like the coffee pot, we even bought a couple of cheap lawn chairs and pillows. In a lot of these campsites, there are drop-off points for things that you basically want to donate to other campers. So we just left all of that stuff that we didn't want to throw away, you know? So we just left it in like a donation bin in the Grand Canyon. So if somebody out there has our lawn chairs, I hope you enjoyed them. Before we even left for the trip, I bought 6 32-ounce Nalgene bottles for water, and while we hiked, we used carabiners to attach them to our backpacks. Both of us usually brought 2 full bottles per hike. And one thing we brought on every single hike were these homemade granola bar things that I learned how to make when I whitewater rafted a few years ago. You get tortillas, peanut butter, honey, and honey bunches of oats cereal. You wrap it all together in the tortilla, put it in aluminum foil, and you're set. You have a homemade granola bar. It's pretty awesome. Really great for just throwing in your backpack. Other than that, we brought our own blankets in our checked luggage and packed super light when it came to clothes. So yeah, that's my favorite trip I've ever been on. There's a good chance that if you're watching this video and you're not a follower of this channel, you're looking to go on a similar trip, you're doing some research. And I know it's super daunting. There's a lot of information. So if you have any questions at all, any questions, man, feel free to toss them in the video description below. I'll do my best to answer the comments about this specific trip or things you might not be sure about. Or you can shoot me a tweet at HelloGreedo. Thanks for watching, guys. Get out there and explore. HelloGreedo, out.